Futurama comic issue 22. We see a montage of how bad medicine used to be. Even the 21st century showed someone getting billed for something even though the MRI showed he's healthy. The surprise at the end is that by the 31st century, Zoidberg is using a leech on Fry. A doctor leech who says he's healthy. Good thing we're supposed to think he's a bad doctor. So it's not like it's a ridiculously pessimistic assumption of how future doctors would be. Fry complains that he hates checkups, and the doctor leech turns out to still be on him. And Hermes is somehow optimistic when reading the reports that they're all healthy, even though they're reports from bad doctors. Although with Zoidberg's luck, I bet the leech doctor is more qualified than him. Hermes reveals that the crew's lost weight since last year, and it's getting worse. And Amy talks as if Leela needed to lose weight. Fry wonders why, and Bender serves them horrible cooking. Somehow it took until now for Hermes to wonder if Bender's responsible for their weight loss. Isn't it immediately obvious that all of them would have just refused to eat his cooking? And eaten stuff like snacks, microwavable food and fast food, or even learned to cook for themselves? Leela's always portrayed as smart, but she's never been so above it all if even she ate his cooking. Bender would know his cooking sucks from their very obvious reactions, so he's only doing this because he's a jerk. Zoidberg says he'll step out of his shell and show his abs, and he's told he'll get bribed to never take off his shell again. Bender wonders where his spare set of eyes are and puts them on, and it cuts to a week later where we see Calculon on his TV show. Then we see Bender and Fry doing a weight loss commercial together. He tells Fry to drink his shake, which is made with the finest food rejected by the FDA. Bender's trying to make money off his bad cooking by recording his friends talking about it. And of course, there really are people desperate enough to buy his cooking. Wait a minute, how are heads in a jar like Nixon eating food when a jar is separating them from the food? We aren't seeing tubes connected to his jar with mashed up food in it. Where did the food go? I guess a stomach in his neck collar thing. Fry shows up for work late, and Hermes says he has to dock his pay and eat his shirt, and denies that he's eating it to avoid eating Bender's food. But how would that be his only alternative? There's plenty of jokes about how little Farnsworth pays his employees, but I always imagined that Hermes would make more money than the rest of them. Why wouldn't Farnsworth use his science to have his own greenhouse underground, so he wouldn't have to eat Bender's cooking? After we see some women amazed at how Nixon looks after losing some weight, I feel bad for Fry because he hurt his arm sticking out of a window in space. Then Nixon contacts them with the hologram wanting Bender, who assumes he's being charged with a crime, but Nixon's not a cop. He tries to disguise himself as Amy, but he'd know it was a bad disguise. He's told to work for Nixon to be his physical fitness instructor, and he agrees because he could boss anyone in the city around as long as it's in the name of physical fitness. The next day, it turns out Bender was somehow given the authority to ban all fatty and tasty food. It is entertaining that there's a reporter that's so obviously evil, and that might be why he's still on the job, to be entertaining. But still, the president would have been in trouble for this. Fry shows up late for work again and explains that it's not his fault that tube traffic is so bad, and he's told to complain to City Hall and is told to grease up the tubes. Bender sure is stupid if he thinks getting everyone to hate him on TV won't backfire, like with an angry mob. But he's always been this dumb based on how he treats his friends. He tells people to begin every day with exercise, and worst of all, they have to do it at a certain place. Then he tells people to make shoes, and Leela wonders how this is exercise. He just wants to make money. Some of them would be grateful they don't have to exhaust themselves exercising. Leela's told that she'd be convicted of treason if she tried to leave, and then it turns out he's been working the crowd for 12 hours. Rick is more sympathetic than Bender. Not only is he more of a deep character, with self-awareness, but at least most of the stuff Morty has to deal with because of him isn't something he directly does to him on purpose for sadism. Instead, it's just that his adventures in science just happen to be dangerous. The times when we're supposed to believe Bender cares about his friends seem a lot more hollow than when Rick proves with his actions that he cares about his family. Bender tries to be entertaining because he stands out, but he's just not likable enough for me to care about him, and doesn't suffer enough karma either, while Rick's constantly called out. Usually Bender's so-called attachment to Fry just seems like possessiveness, since he hurts him more often than not. After a meta-joke with the text box being called the caption bot, Bender admits he shouldn't work them to death, but still wants them around the same time tomorrow. Finally, at least Hermes calls him out, only to say it's a pleasure doing business with him and tell him to keep up the good work, because Bender said he wanted to hire Planet Express to deliver his merchandise around the universe. That would benefit Planet Express financially, so he has reason to congratulate him. But he shouldn't just get karma at the end of the story. We get to the next day where he's telling various sections of people to work for him. Wouldn't Nixon have found out by now that none of this falls under physical fitness? He says he wants those garden gnome smoke detectors packed up, and wants to see his reflection in collector plates, and he also wants to see collector plates celebrating the irony of using slave labor to make the emancipation plates. He's reluctant to let his so-called best friend leave early. He's told he's got no time for sleep because he's always busy. He calls him Buddy just to say he's had the days legally changed to be 40 hours long. Fry's getting nothing out of being friends with him. And honestly, that gets old when you get older and think more. Layla says he'll get fired, but it turns out Nixon can't fire anyone with his mouth full. But he could let go of the shoelace at any time. Amy says Leela's sure doing well for someone her age, so Leela gets competitive with her. Fry wants to talk with Bender, but is somehow polite enough to wait until after he finishes a conference call on the phone where he triples everyone's workload and rolls in his money. How is Fry such a doormat? It's not like Bender can shoot lasers. He desperately puts faith in Bender to realize that what he's doing is wrong and give up, and because he's greasy, he gets pushed and slides away. We see the angel and devil on Bender's shoulders, and the devil agrees with the angel, and it made me smile that they were just puppets of his friends trying to manipulate him. And Bender lampshades how lame it is. Leela then reveals that it's a factory-issued morality program that he can choose to run. Won't it run itself on a very regular basis? I know he's a defective robot, doubly so since he only acted like Bender after he got electrocuted. So I guess part of the electrocution-induced glitch in the pilot is that he can choose to run his program. But the Clamps and Dawnbot have to have that freedom too. Every robot would be forced to have that morality program run regularly all the time. The laws of robotics. Of course, it goes without saying that they'd prevent free-willed robots from even being made in real life. They'd have been illegal. Anyways, somehow his program's a floppy disk that's in BASIC. Why is Bender agreeing to run it? Then he looks weird, and it turns out he put a video game on this disk and has to run from enemies in Wolfenstein 3D. Fry got hurt by sliding because somehow his city's round. It'd have to be on a platform with shifting gravity. He pulls Leela's ponytail to help her pull the floppy out, and Bender says it taught him nothing, but then says he's been no better than those dictators in that game and says he'll go back to starving people. So the program did work and he's just kidding himself. Fry tells Samir he's out of lubricant and gets told everyone was too busy being enslaved to order it, so left to improvise. We see him at the space dump and black hole landfill where the fatty foods are being slowly sent towards the black hole. But conveniently, the employee's too lazy to stop him from taking it to grease up the tubes. At first I thought he was going to intentionally get the tasty food back to the people, and that'd make him look more heroic. Instead it's an accident, as people in tubes smell bacon and frosting and they all lick the tubes. So the people in the city fatten up, and the tube traffic becomes slower than ever, and Fry's fired, which he's thankfully happy to hear. Bender's fired because of that, and he lampshades that he should have been fired earlier. Nixon says he approved of what he was doing because it was good-natured evil and just wants to punish him for failure. Any kind of straw man is annoying. He's told he has to wear a medal of failure for a month, but he doesn't wear it at work, so we don't even get that as karma. I guess he gets arrested every time he doesn't wear it outside. Bender says his products are still out there on other planets making people's lives better, and then we see someone saying to the Science Council that planet Krypton's about to explode. But he's not believed because they bought Bender's planetary destruction detector that doesn't work. Since when does Bender have a faulty detector like that to sell? Also, unless it's magic, there's no way any planet would explode. This is a depressing story where Bender gets hired as a fitness instructor for the country by Nixon because he advertises bad cooking as something for weight loss ingenuously, when I'd expect it to be outright poisonous. Not just make people lose weight. And he enslaves everyone in the city into making merchandise for him to make money off of. Somehow he got the idea he was allowed to do that even though it clearly doesn't fall under the realm of physical fitness, which Nixon clarified was all he could boss people around with at the start. Even when he loses a job, it's somehow not the immediate result of even making Nixon do the work. Instead, he gets fired because somehow Fry isn't stopped from taking fatty food from a dump and greasing up the tubes with it, so people fatten up from licking them. And Bender barely gets any punishment afterwards, which is a problem because this is probably the issue where he's at his worst. It really stands out. I went back to this issue to record it and I was like, oh no, this is gonna be this story.